Welcome, everyone, and thank you for tuning into another edition of Live with the League. I'm your host, Emily Kalashewski, and we have got an exciting lineup today. A couple of notes before we get into it, some housekeeping. If you have questions for our guests or our state and federal affairs team, please feel free to post those in the chat, in the Q&A, or in the comments on the Facebook feed, and we will answer as many as we can during the show. And any links or resources that we reference today will also be posted in the chats, either here in Zoom or on Facebook Live, so you can access any resources that we are referencing today. With that, let's get into it. We're going to start off with a lively discussion on our Community Excellence Award, which most of you joining us probably know is our highest and most prestigious community honor. Communities submit their most innovative and impactful projects every year, whether it's a streetscape redesign, new programming, or a revitalization initiative. And a panel of judges evaluates each of those entries, and 4 finalists are then selected to move on to convention, where attendees vote for the winner during the closing session. Just as a very brief overview of what that process looks like. So today we are actually joined by 2 outstanding CEA communities. So we are going to jump right into the conversation. Joining us, we have Mayor Barnett from the city of Rochester Hills, our 2021 winner for reimagining Auburn Road. So we'll get into that a little bit. I'll have you describe that. And then, of course, we've got City Manager Erik Tungate from the city of Oak Park, a 2024 finalist from the 9-mile redesign project. So to get into it, first, Mayor Barnett, Erik, thank you so much for joining us. We're delighted to have you here today to talk about the awesome things you've done in your communities and how you put that into a Community Excellence Award submission. To get us started, Mayor Barnett, can you briefly describe your project from back in 2021 for our participants who might not have attended convention and heard about it?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for inviting me, and it's always good to be on with Erik and other great leaders across Southeast Michigan. Yeah. So our project was kind of a fun one. It was a monumental move for the city. We have a kind of a section of our community used to be sort of called Old Town along Auburn Road. And it was kind of left behind in the city's transformation and growth and throughout the 90s and the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. And so we wanted to really try and revitalize it, bring it together, bring the businesses together, put a comprehensive plan, add art, create a whole renaissance down there to kind of create a bit of a downtown for the city where we didn't really have one. And so it was really a significant effort from the Department of Public Services, the Planning and Economic Development Department, and many others, parks as well, to take the area. We took the road over from the Road Commission to put about $15 million of investment into to the street, to add streetscape, to add the city's first splash pad, to rework the entire area. And long story short, it's been a wild success. Of course, we were incredibly fortunate to win the 2021 CEA award, which I know we'll dive into a little bit more about that process. But beyond that, outside of the excitement of winning that award, it has been a tremendous shot in the arm for that section of our community. The property values in that part of town are rising 40% faster than every other part of our city. So the investment that the city put in is paying off. We've got new restaurants, we've got new buildings going in, new work-life areas or developments going in. So it was a lot of sweat equity, a lot of challenge, but the city team, all credit to our city team, really executed it well, and it's paying off in great dividends. And really the one thing that we really centered around was participating in this MML process and how that allowed us to market it to the region as really what we said, it was the Michigan's coolest project in 2021. And that allowed us to get a lot more, discussion about it in the community. It was a wonderful process, and certainly hope that people can come see it if they're in the region. Love to showcase it and show people what you can do when you work together.
Absolutely. Well, we'll get into the marketing of it and how that has helped you, because I'm sure it can help other communities who are interested in participating. But Erik, let's hear from you. Can you talk us through a little bit about your project as well?
Yeah, so our project was along 9-Mile Road in Oak Park. And it's interesting to hear Mayor Barnett talk about some of the projects they've done, because we modeled our project, and our project was taking about 25 feet of right of way, grassed over, collecting trash, completely unused right of way. We wanted to model it after communities like Rochester Hills and Ferndale and communities around us to create a linear park. And so we spent about $6 million on creating really what is in the inner ring suburbs, one of the, if not the only, but one of the few actual linear parks. And it's got playscapes for children. It's got sensory panels. And we actually, as a matter of fact, took two of our adjoining streets coming into the park and closed them, if you can believe that, and created two additional pocket parks along this stretch of 9 Mile Road. So it's really, for us, it's taking right of way, an unused right of way that was collecting trash, not being used, as I mentioned, and turning it into a public amenity and asset that has, just like in Rochester Hills, it's really added a tremendous amount to the increasing taxable values in the nearby area. In fact, I think in the last 3 years, we've led Oakland County in the percentage increase in taxable values, due in large part to a lot of new investment that has come around these quality of life amenity improvements we've made.
Incredible. And what I find so interesting is that, you're both here today, and your project, Erik, was somewhat inspired by what's happening in Rochester Hills. So I want to talk about, from both of you, Mayor Barnett and Erik, what motivated you to apply for the Community Excellence Award? Certainly you didn't do these projects because you wanted to win an award. You did them because they were good for your communities. But I think it's often, we talk about it here as league staff, that it's nice to take a moment to stop and celebrate the work that you've done and share out. Of course, that's a reason why it's such a great convening when we're together for Capitol Conference or Convention, where we can share those things with one another and be inspired by each other's works. But in a time when, you could be doing any other number of things, not that it's a huge lift to apply for the CEA, but there is a little bit of work when it comes to actually being a finalist and getting through some of those hurdles at convention. What motivated you to apply? Mayor Barnett, I'll start with you.
Well, I think we recognized that what we were doing was pretty unusual. To be able to bring the private sector, the business community, the neighborhoods, all these folks together around a single purpose is difficult to do. We had tried it as a city a couple times in our past before and hadn't really been able to move it from the idea shelf into reality. And I think there's probably a lot of projects like that. This is certainly replicable in a lot of places around the state of Michigan. And so just like Erik said, good mayors, steal a lot. And if you find a good idea, then you want to try to replicate it. I think we had a good idea. Again, all credit to our city team. And if you can put it out there, you hope that other people see it and go, hey, we could take parts of that and do that in our community, or we could do that, that would work here as well. And so I think part of it was we wanted to tell our story, and in hopes that other people might be able to find a way to do it in their community as well. It's been, like I said, it's been a revitalization. It's improved the safety of the community, that in terms of walkability. You drive down there on a beautiful day like today, and there are always people out and about, and they never were there before. And creating space is a huge part of what we do.
Absolutely, rising tide lifts all ships, for sure. I think we say that a lot here. Erik, what about you? What was the motivation to apply?
Well, I think ours was a little bit different. I would say I concur with everything that the mayor had mentioned for them. But for us, it was really that we are a community that I think for so long has really fallen by the wayside in terms of any notoriety. And quite frankly, we really hadn't done a tremendous amount of public improvements over the last 20, 30 years up until recently. So for us, this was an opportunity to sort of get our names out there and get some recognition and bring some awareness. Where we are in the inner ring here, Southeast Oakland County is one of the population centers of the region. So we have hundreds of thousands of people who otherwise wouldn't know much about us in our own area. So for us, it was getting out there and bringing attention to it, and of course, bringing investment and those kinds of things that come with that too.
Amazing. Well, I want to talk about the actual nuts and bolts, the technical piece of applying, because it certainly takes some staff time to put that application together. And I'll note that actually applying, we try to make it as easy as possible. You can head to our website now to read more about the rules, look at the submission form. But either of you, maybe Mayor Barnett, I'll start with you. When it comes to actually applying for the award, getting that application in, we've got a deadline of May 17th this year for all of you listening who are getting maybe some ideas to submit a cool project. Did you run into any challenges when it comes to creating that submission, or would you say it was pretty smooth sailing for you?
No, it was really easy. I mean, those of us who've done this for a while, you know that there are easy processes, and there are those that are awful. Hopefully, no one from Eagles on the call, but this is certainly one that was very simple. Our team, your team at the MML, answered all the questions. Most of our work was trying, and I think we might talk about this in a minute, was trying to put together the presentation. How would we stand out on the day of and during the conference? But the actual application itself was really simple. You might be thinking, oh my gosh, the deadline's in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever it is, but that's absolutely plenty of time, even if you're starting from ground zero right now, because the process is not that difficult.
We love to hear that. And I'll give a brief shout out, Heather Elliott, who coordinates the Community Excellence Award Project. We work closely together, and she coordinates this so well. So I got to give her a shout out for answering all those questions and being the liaison here. Erik, what about you? What was the process like for the actual application?
Well, I was going to say that Heather, Emily, the entire staff at MML, just like the mayor said, I mean, municipalities like ours, we deal with tons and tons of different organizations, and sometimes the process can be burdensome. And it's unfortunately more, more frequent than not where it's a pain. And I think, working with you guys was seamless. Any questions that we had, you guys were front and center in answering those questions for us.
Again, a big shout out to Heather there. So I want to talk about maybe the biggest piece of prepping once you become a finalist, right? The application itself is easy. You can submit your project. And of course, you want to do that as best you can. There are lots of examples on our website. We've got former projects on there. Each web page is developed based on applications. So you can take a peek at what Rochester Hills submitted, what Oak Park submitted, and many others. But I would say the meat and potatoes, of course, is when we get to convention and our 4 finalists have a booth where they get to chat with attendees, trying to maybe persuade them for their vote. And of course, that presentation on stage during our opening general session, you get 7 minutes to pitch your project and why it should win the Community Excellence Award. So Mayor Barnett, let's start with you. You talked a little bit about it in preparation for that. What was your mindset going in, and how did you land on your overall strategy?
Yeah. Well, once we found out that we were competing against Sterling Heights, we just wanted to crush them, which was basically our entire goal going into this.
I was going to bring that up because the two of you really had a very competitive spirit. Those two communities was very notable in 2021.
I'm waiting for the chats to pop up from either folks from Eagle or folks from Sterling Heights who might be on the call. No, we have a really great creative team here, and we came up with a theme of sort of the Beatles song "Come Together," and so that sort of led us through our design. We used the music, we put a video together. To talk about a project in 7 minutes is always challenging whenever you're talking about your own community. So we wanted to control that. So we did most of that through a video. And then actually for the conference itself, we had all sorts of swag. We created, a bunch of visuals to kind of talk about what it looked like before and what it was, what we could see it looking like, what it looked like after. A lot of before and after were very powerful visuals. We had the music playing the whole time. It turns out a lot of MML folks like the Beatles, so that worked out well for us. But the part of that was kind of fun was that the whole team kind of got together on the execution of the project, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, we really enjoyed working it. We of course accomplished the number one goal, which was beating Sterling Heights, and also had a lot of fun along the way. So the whole process was really enjoyable. And we kept the trophy for a year. We have all sorts of pictures around City Hall of the inappropriate things we did with the trophy the next 12 months before we gave it back. It ended up being kind of a big morale booster here for us as well. So a lot of the benefits that you'd expect, but then a lot of subsidiary benefits that were just kind of fun because we have a pretty fun creative team here that made the whole process pretty enjoyable.
I love that. I love hearing about that whole process. Erik, what about you? And specifically, would you mind mentioning the squirrel costume that was included?
Yeah, I mean, so this was our first time ever applying. So we were trying all the gimmicks here to pull this thing off and coerce people to vote for us. And I wish, by the way, it's kind of hard to say that we'd want to crush the city of Houghton, the winner last year, because they're just
Yes,
in the world. But
delightful.
but those
Right.
Sterling Heights folks, yeah, I get it. I mean, but so I think one thing that I would, just underscore, we also really focused on the before and afters because it was so dramatic. And we have a videographer here on our staff, so it was nice that we could do a lot of the drone shots and show the before and afters of just how dilapidated this looked in comparison to how vibrant it looks now in the video. And then we brought our city mascot, and we're in a big dispute with Oakland County right now because they're trying to claim that Okie is their mascot and Okie is Oak Park's mascot, of course. So we also went as far as trying to bribe people with a Jamison Williams football jersey. So we did a raffle at our station for that. So none of this worked, but just being a finalist was fantastic because, again, the city of Houghton pulled it off, and rightfully so. Their project was amazing.
Yes, I think I want to get to that next, right? Because I think there are positive benefits even if you aren't selected as the ultimate winner. And if you are, of course, there's a huge benefit. I mean, Barnett, you said this was like the coolest project in Michigan competition. So talk a little bit about what that meant for your community afterwards and how you turned that into marketing for that project and Rochester Hills overall.
Yeah. First of all, Erik, we should probably compare notes. Did you also have to mow Dan Gilmartin's yard all summer? Because that was really annoying
That might have
aspect.
made the difference, right?
Picking up trash. I don't know if you did that same thing, but yeah, he had me at work.
Emily, we like I said, we dreamed big with this project and created a vision that not everyone necessarily bought into initially. We had the city's first parking lots down there. We had city-owned parking lots. We did the city's first splash pad. We introduced art up and down the corridor through a bunch of projects where we engaged our community school district. All those things are kind of firsts for the city. And so, when you throw something out there that not everyone can see, but then you get the validation of somebody or a group like the MML. And again, we probably took some liberties with calling it, Michigan's coolest project, but we really sort of branded, that all over the place and, told these restaurants, you're operating in what is the coolest project in the state of Michigan. And we told students that they were competing to put their art in what was voted on as the coolest project in the entire state of Michigan. And it just added, I think a certain air of gravitas to everything that we did. Obviously we recognize the significance of the MML and the sort of large scope they have across the entire state, but not everyone does. And so to have this, this sort of outside group say, hey, all the people around here who do what we do said this was really pretty well done. I think there's a lot of community pride, and we try to translate that into as many avenues as we could to grow the brand. And like I said, it's been really a great story for the city. And a lot of people down there know more about this project because of this award.
Right. Erik, what about you? I mean, you've mentioned you were a finalist, you did not win. And again, hard to go up against the delightful, just heartwarming story of Houghton. But there still are benefits. And I will mention you're a finalist and you're here on our Live with the League today. And we love being able to highlight all of the cool projects, even those that don't win coolest project in Michigan, but were finalists for coolest project in Michigan, as Mayor Barnett likes to call the award. So talk a little bit about what that meant for your community and what kind of impact it had, maybe not just on your community, but also on your staff.
Oh, it was echoing what the mayor said too. I think it was a morale booster for our staff. I mean, people took great pride. I sort of felt like I was on like a delegation going to the conference, and then we were sort of going there to represent, like it was the NFL draft or something. So it was kind of it was very heartwarming, very morale boosting for the staff and the public, quite honestly. And again, we're a community that hasn't really received a tremendous amount of recognition. So the experience was tremendous. I mean, I think just one thing I would add in terms of what I have gained, I've been here in my position for the last 13 years. And one of the things that I was so inspired by was how great our state is and the things that are going on around our beautiful state. We didn't win, but losing to Houghton and the great project that they're doing is just, it's hard to be mad about that. And I think, for us, it's a learning experience. And as I mentioned a little while ago, we actually went out, this same delegation that went and presented for the Community Excellence Award program at the convention, we actually toured Innovation Hills in Rochester Hills. And I think the mayor was there speaking when we toured that. I don't know if he remembers that or not, but we used some of the things that they put in that project in our 9 Mile Linear Park project. So, the learning experience is just, it's well worth it for us.
Well, thank you so much. Mayor Barnett, Erik, thank you for joining us. Any final words of advice for any community who's considering applying for the award?
Yeah, I would just say to what Erik said. I mean, part of it is the journey of doing it is a lot of fun, and we made it we made it kind of an adventure like we do with a lot of things. We themed it, we threw ideas around, and this whole kind of come together thing kind of was born from it. And then we thought, what kind of cool swag can we give? And you just saw a lot of people who weren't maybe even initially connected to the project, thinking about how they could get the project together. So those sorts of morale moments, those sorts of kind of cool come together things are really special, and they're not in our everyday work. So I would encourage folks to to go for it, to try it. And it doesn't, you don't have to have a $15 million or $6 million project. I've seen projects that have just been like hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you go, wow, that was a great idea. That was a great collaboration, a great partnership, and we could do that here in our city too. So it's not about who spends the most or who has the biggest project. A lot of times it's the unique relationships, and really, is it something that can be replicated across the state of Michigan? Because that seems to be where most people, when they come, they go, yeah, we could do that here. That's really pretty cool. So I would go for it. No regrets, and a lot of fun along the way.
Thanks, Mayor Barnett. Erik, what about you?
I would just say, just briefly, I would encourage people to embrace it. The experience, we really embraced it from, we had fun with it. And I think, people want to see, and I think also the other piece of advice I would give is just make sure that you do a good job of telling the pre-story to the project. Because again, I think especially in our case, people assume that we live here, we work here every day in our communities, so we know them, but people around the rest of the state don't really know them as well as we think they do. So take the time to explain the project, embrace it, have fun with it, and learn.
Absolutely. Well, Mayor Barnett, Erik, thank you so much, representing Rochester Hills and Oak Park for a Community Excellence Award program. Again, those applications are due by May 17th. For this year. You can learn more at cea.mml.org. Great conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We are going to transition right away into our legislative update, getting the legislative landscape with our state and federal affairs team. We've got John and Jen with us today, and a few things to go over. So, John, I'm actually going to start with you. Let's talk a little bit about the Public Safety Trust Fund. It's been a while since we've met for Live with the League. So what update can you give us there?
Yeah, happy to do that, but I'm gonna segue back to the CEA stuff for just a
Okay.
second.
All
Jen,
right.
I
I
see
love it.
that look.
Let's get back to it.
Well, I mean, so much of that conversation was about like the benefit to the community, the award, sort of that. There's actually a huge benefit for us from a legislative standpoint as we get to highlight and showcase, both the winner, those that participate. I mean, even to the point where in our slides, right, there's like pictures of Bridgman and past projects and things like that. And we use it as an example as to the good things that are taking place, right? And when
Mhm.
people always sort of question like what's happening at the local level, why should we need resources? What's the value in that? Should we be investing? Should we not be investing? I mean, being able to showcase our members' projects before the legislature is an excellent tool when it comes to advocacy. So as much as we highlight this and we do this at our convention and it seems very much specific to celebrating our members in that moment, our ability as staff to use that on the outside is also critical. So, we as much as Erik and Mayor Barnett were talking about, we as staff, particularly on the SFAD team, would encourage you to participate and showcase that, so we can use it as good examples for all the great things that are happening in our communities across the state. And so I just want to make sure people understand kind of the full scope of this benefit that we get in addition to the community being able to really stand it up and highlight it in their communities.
Absolutely. And it's, again, yes, definitely about the celebration, but it helps all of us across the state to have examples of why this type of investment matters, and particularly, as you said, here in our advocacy team.
Yeah.
All right.
So
I love that.
public safety, right?
Yeah, public
Um,
safety.
yeah, I mean, obviously, I mean, we talk about public safety in general a lot in our communities, whether that be from a cost driver, rather from a legacy cost issue, but really most importantly from the service that we provide and what that does for our communities, our individual residents, our businesses in terms of how they interact, how they feel, and are we welcoming to those that may want to visit and they feel as if they have an environment that they can come and enjoy. And so, one of the pushes over really the last year and a half has been to create what's known as the Public Safety Trust Fund.
Mhm.
That legislation was introduced last year. It actually passed both the House and the Senate, but ultimately, because the House was out in lame duck, it was not sent to the governor for signature. But the one unique piece about what happened last year is that there was $75 million in the budget for this. But in order for those resources to be dispersed, the two bills that were, uh, as I mentioned, passed the House and the Senate last year, but died as a result of what took place in lame duck, because those didn't pass, those funds could not be dispersed. So
Mhm.
we're back at it this year. The legislation was reintroduced and recently passed the House with over 100 votes. And we're anticipating the Senate to continue to consider that. But it's once again going to become a budget discussion over the next weeks and months as we move forward. The one change this year is not only is there $75 million in the traditional sense to go to communities, really to target and protect against violent crime, and that's the major metric by which they disperse the funds. But this year, there's also an additional $40 million added to this pot, taking it to $115 million to deliver resources directly to the county sheriff's offices as well. So there's been an expansion of sort of the thought process here in terms of where the benefit goes. You see again a lot of support for it. Ultimately, at the end of the day, and it's 100% anticipated that it'll be in the House budget at that full 115 million. The Senate budget may be a little bit different, simply because it's a change from last year's amount, and so they'll have to negotiate that out. But when we think about the direct resources again to our communities, things that we've advocated for, and really delivering, sort of in a scope that's really going to make a big difference, this would once again fit into that category, and we're excited about its passage.
I love that. Okay. So as we're talking about trust funds, let's get into another one. I don't know if we could rank these, but I feel like the revenue sharing trust fund gets a lot of airtime. So might be a little bit higher in the ranking. Jen, can you walk us through the status of the revenue sharing trust fund, and how our members can lend their voice to supporting it?
Yes. So at Capitol Conference, if you were there, you know, this was one of those topics that was high on our list, and we talked to and looked to engage the attendees for their support of the revenue sharing trust fund bills, and we were anxiously awaiting their reintroduction, and that happened about 2 weeks ago. House Bill 4311 and 4312 were reintroduced. We're using or have the same great duo of Rep. O'Neill and Rep. Tisdale introducing those or reintroducing those and being great advocates to move those forward. And so we did. We have a link, I believe it is, to anyone who has not filled out a card of support for the revenue sharing trust fund bills and would like to, you can click on that link that was just put in the chat. And we have over, I believe, 200 or 300 right now. And last year, last session, when we did that at CapCon, walking into committee with that stack of support, that visual was huge. And, you know, really shows the breadth of how important these bills are for municipalities, and you know why they're our number one priority in getting done.
Absolutely. And that link is now in the chat, so you can fill that out to voice your support for the revenue sharing trust fund. We need that support again because the last session ended. And so just because you did it a year ago does not mean that you shouldn't do it again. We need that again so we can show your support in this current legislative session. And I will note the benefit, if you're an elected official, in addition to just supporting something that's important for municipalities, is that you get an EOA advocacy credit for it. So if you're looking for any easy ways to do that, there's one of them right there for you in the chat to fill out.
Well, and we're hoping these bills are going to be brought up in committee shortly. But as John had mentioned with the public safety trust fund bills, you know, we are trying and pushing for these bills to move with the budget as they are considered in both chambers. And we want to make sure we get these in or align with the budget numbers for revenue sharing.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jen, for that update. Let's turn right into the ARPA filing deadline. The deadline for that reporting is approaching. So, Jen, what should our members know to stay compliant?
Make sure you filed. So I know we have colleagues who have been personally or directly reaching out to communities who have not filed yet and that have had an issue with logging in, or maybe the individual who originally was the point person has left the municipality and trying to get them connected. So if your community, if your municipality, if you have not filed yet, if you are having difficulties with the system logging in, please contact us. I believe we have a blog on the John. I'm looking at you because I think you did it.
We just posted a blog late last week where U.S. Treasury is actually doing 2 workshops. They're not calling them webinars, but they're calling them workshops to really make sure if you have any last minute questions to hit this April 30th deadline here in 2 days for the reporting, that you have every tool at your disposal to do that. I think, you know, previously there was a lot of leniency, quite frankly, in the past administration with some of the reporting as people were figuring that out. Our intel is suggesting right now that that same leniency might not be afforded, and that clawbacks could be a very real thing if the reporting isn't done incomplete. So you got to make sure that you do that. We're very fortunate, as we've talked about before, sort of our partnership with the National League of Cities, who we have been communicating daily with on this, and also our state treasury, who's been very helpful in terms of sort of gathering information. And really where we're at right now is probably down to a pretty select few. But at the end of the day, it's just something that you want to double check, make sure everything's in order, and you're ready to go come the deadline here in 2 days.
All right, 2 days. So get in there, make sure you get that done. John, sticking with you, let's talk about transportation. We've got a transportation package. We've had some movement in the last couple of weeks, especially since we last met for Live with the League. So what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a lot about the proposal last time and how it delivers more resources to local government and the inclusion of our Neighborhood Roads Fund, and really one of the most important inclusions from the House was the protection of constitutional revenue sharing. So much to our surprise, quite frankly, the Senate Appropriations Committee posted for a hearing on this about a week and a half ago. So they had that hearing, which they had some of the sponsors from the House come and explain the proposal, and then they were peppered with questions about it. And really a lot of the undercurrent in that conversation was about, well, how do you pay for this, right? So the House has not identified any new revenue in which to do it. They've identified existing resources in which to make that happen. And then, so really, how do you make the books balance at the end of the day? So it was really fascinating to listen to that conversation. But one of the things that I think perked all of our ears on our team is when Senator Cherry started asking them about revenue sharing and the trust fund specifically. And the sponsors of that package reiterated their commitment to revenue sharing, one, to not be cut, but two, to specifically start to work on the revenue sharing trust fund. And so it was adjacent to the transportation topic, but really front and center in that committee testimony. And so we look at this as understanding a couple of things. One, that we're still very early in the process. Two, that we're actually making forward momentum in a way that we haven't done before, simply because there's been a proposal that's passed. People are paying attention to that. The governor's continuing to put out more information to try to sort of pressure action on it. But also that there's going to need to be compromise ultimately at the end of the day, or at least what we're assuming in order for this to get done, which is either going to have to be sort of a reshuffling of priorities in here, or even a conversation about new revenue, which we're open to, and trying to find a solution that can gather the votes necessary to move this forward. But that being said, a lot of positives for us as you see our issues front and center being talked about, whether that be revenue sharing sort of adjacent to this and its impact, or the very direct inclusion of one of our top priorities on the Neighborhood Roads Fund.
Yeah, certainly. We'll take that for sure. Moving on along to another issue, oath of office is another issue that's come up over the last few weeks since we've met. Jen, walk us through the updates as it relates to that.
So oath of office bills we had previously in the last session, and they were a casualty of lame duck. This was one of those, us as the SFAD team being up all night those last few days of the lame duck session. This was a text received, God, it was like 4 o'clock in the morning of, hey, we're not going to we know the oath of office bills are highly supported, but we're not going to do those because we're trying to, get out of here at some point. So the oath of office bills, while supported in the House and the Senate last time, they got reintroduced last week, had testimony in Senate Elections and Ethics. It's Senate Bill 240 through 243. And just as a recap, these are a fix to the issues created with the Proposal 2 implementation legislation. It was requiring that clerks account for overseas and military ballots 6 days after the election. And then there was some conflicting about when you certify elections. Different municipalities in their charter have a very particular date that conflicted with this new act and law. And so these are the remedy to that. We're hoping and don't anticipate issues in the House, since these were overwhelmingly passed in the House last time. But yeah, we supported the bills. Dave and the committee, our internal policy committee, ran through those real quick so that we were able to submit cards of support moving forward. So that's a good thing. That's one of the things we've had on our list from carryover from last year that we knew needed to still be done. And so the fact that those were introduced and cleared committee, we'll see them here on the Senate floor shortly and get them moving in the House.
All right, we'll keep an eye out for that issue as it moves along. One more that we want to get to before we conclude today is renewable energy and the renewable energy bill. So John, what can you tell us is the latest there?
Yeah, so some of you may recall late in 2023, legislation was passed that really preempted local control over siting of utility scale wind, solar, and battery storage. At the time, we opposed that legislation, and it was one of, if not maybe the biggest fight in the legislature up until that point. And when we look at what took place there, it was a party line vote, and there was a lot of conversation around local control, and really to the point that that was the dominant narrative, particularly by the Republicans. And so this year, after the Republicans took over the House, there was a commitment by them to repeal and restore local control as a result of what was taken away within that energy package. So the Clean and Renewable Energy and Energy Waste Act is what's at stake here. There are two pieces of legislation, 4027 and 4028. And really what it does is it eliminates that preemption of local control, restores that ability on the siting piece, and doesn't require the interaction with the Michigan Public Service Commission in terms of certifying that you have adopted an ordinance that's in compliance. And so when we look at what's taking place here, not only are we once again having a chamber talk about the importance of local control from a policy standpoint, the things that it impacts both on the city and village side, but really when you think about more rural townships and counties, and we tend to run in packs in local government, are also very supportive of this from MTA and max level. And, so we're partnering with them once again, looking to see if there's something we can do. Now, the likelihood of this passing in the Senate might not be very high as it's still controlled by Dems. But again, when you look at setting precedent and you talk about the narrative of local control, it gives us something to build on as we look at other issues. And so I know we've talked about housing a ton on this program, right? And other issues where local control and preemption of that local control becomes a major topic. Having good examples to point to where legislators have stood out and said, hey, we're going to support this is something that we can say you should be consistent on. So while maybe these don't make it to the governor's desk at the end of the day, the idea that there are champions out there for local control, the restoration of that, and understanding our autonomy is really, really important.
Absolutely. And another question's come in the chat here. Any update on the water affordability bills?
Yeah, so last session, you may remember there was a package of bills that was introduced that at its simplest form would have required a $2 on-bill monthly charge to fund a statewide water affordability program. Senator Chang led that. We talked about sort of her involvement and our involvement in that. And just last week, and I'm sorry, I don't have the bill numbers right off the top of my head, that package was once again introduced in the Senate. There are some fairly significant changes to that right now, some of which we are still digesting. We do not have an official position as of today, but we will once again do our due diligence, make sure we have a conversation with our internal committee and ultimately our board, much like we did last year on this. And I don't want to sort of jump the gun one way or another based on sort of my initial read of it, but it is something that we sort of see this both from the benefit in terms of, we do support the idea of making sure people have an affordable water bill, and there's programs and sort of state involvement that allows that to take place. The mechanism by which to do that is what we tend to be most concerned about. And so making sure that that mechanism works broad scale for our membership is something that we will once again consider and see either if this works better or if there continue to be other alternatives that may get us to that end goal of making sure that we're helping people that may not be in a position to always afford that bill as it comes to them.
Thanks, John. So another issue to keep an eye on as things develop over the course of this legislative session. That actually wraps up today's Live with the League topics. I want to give a big thank you once again to Mayor Barnett from Rochester Hills and Erik Tungate from Oak Park for joining us to talk a little bit about their Community Excellence Award projects and how easy it is to submit your own project. If you are interested in submitting a project, you can do so at cea.mml.org. We've got that web link posted in the chat for you, and those submissions are due by May 17th. So make sure you get those in. In addition to that, another reminder, voice your support for the Revenue Sharing Trust Fund via that online forum linked also in the chat. And coming up, we've got our Elected Officials Academy Summits taking place May 16th and 17th in Bay City. So we've got our core summit, which is a requirement to complete level 1 of the Elected Officials Academy. So you've got an opportunity to knock that out coming up. And we have our advanced summit, which is an opportunity for folks to earn additional elective credits for EOA. And it has a rotating theme. So you could attend multiple advanced summits and get new content. This theme is leadership development. It is my personal favorite agenda theme. So we hope to see you there May 16th and 17th. For in the moment updates, of course, catch us every other Monday on Live with the League right here, or sign up for our alerts at our Inside 208 blog. You can do that, of course. Thank you all for joining today, and we hope you have a great week.